Somewhere in your house right now, there is a small machine designed to rip you out of unconsciousness at a time your body never agreed to. You call it an alarm. But for nearly all of human history, no one needed one. So how did our ancestors decide when to open their eyes? And why does the answer suggest that almost everything we believe about waking up early might be backwards? It seems obvious at first. No electricity, no streetlights, no glowing phone screens. Surely ancient humans just slept when the sun went down and woke the moment it came up. Simple, logical, wrong. Researchers who studied some of the last remaining hunter-gatherer societies on Earth, communities in Tanzania, Namibia, and Bolivia, who still live largely without electric light, found something nobody expected. These groups did not fall asleep the second darkness arrived. They stayed up for hours after sunset, talking, resting, existing in the dark. Sleep came later than assumed, and it ended earlier than assumed too. But here's the strange part. Their bodies weren't following the sun at all. They were following the temperature. As night deepens, the air cools. And as that cooling reaches its lowest point, just before dawn, something ancient stirs. The body begins to wake, not because light has touched the eyes, but because the falling temperature in the air around it signals the brain that night is ending. Sunrise isn't the trigger. It's the confirmation. This changes the entire picture. For hundreds of thousands of years, the human body wasn't reading a clock. It was reading the planet. Temperature, darkness, the rhythm of a fire dying down. There was no fixed hour stamped onto the morning. There was only a feeling, a shift in the blood, a lightening of the mind that arrived on its own schedule, different night to night, season to season. And that's only the beginning of what history hid from us. For centuries, historians assumed that before artificial light, people slept in one long, unbroken block, the same way most of us try to now. But old court records, diaries, and medical texts from pre-industrial Europe tell a different story. People described something called a first sleep and a second sleep, two distinct chunks of rest, separated by an hour or more of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night. During that gap, people didn't panic. They didn't reach for anything to knock themselves back out. They prayed, thought, talked quietly with a partner, tended a fire, or simply lay in the dark with their mind wandering. Then, naturally, sleep returned for a second round. Waking in the middle of the night wasn't a disorder, it was Tuesday. Which raises an uncomfortable question. If you've ever jolted awake at 3 in the morning and quietly assumed something was wrong with you, what if nothing was wrong at all? What if you were simply doing something the human body has done for most of its existence before we decided that unbroken 8-hour, one-piece sleep was the only acceptable version? So what changed? Light changed. Cheap, artificial, controllable light. Before it existed, night was night, vast, dark, and largely unusable for anything but rest. Once humans could flood a room with brightness at will, the night stopped being a fixed block of forced downtime and started becoming something else. Extra hours, extra productivity, extra life squeezed out of the dark, and the body paid for it. The part of your brain that governs your internal clock is exquisitely sensitive to light. It doesn't just notice bright versus dark, it uses light to calibrate almost everything. When a stress hormone called cortisol should rise to help you feel alert. When a separate hormone called melatonin should rise to make you feel drowsy. When your core temperature should climb or fall. Artificial light at night doesn't just let you stay awake. It tells your brain that the sun hasn't set yet, delaying the very chemical signals that were supposed to wind you down. So humans didn't just gain extra hours, they lost the natural cue that once told them when their two sleeps should begin and end. Now fold in one more piece. That cortisol we mentioned, the hormone that helps you feel sharp and awake, doesn't just switch on the moment you open your eyes. It begins rising before you wake up, quietly building in anticipation, tied to your internal clock's prediction of when morning should arrive. For someone whose circadian rhythm is aligned with actual sunlight and darkness, that surge happens on its own, gently and roughly in sync with dawn. For someone who forces themselves awake at 5 in the morning, in the dark, on a schedule set by ambition rather than biology, that hormonal wave often hasn't crested yet. The body is being woken before its own internal messenger has finished delivering the signal. It isn't laziness, it's mismatch. This is the quiet irony sitting underneath so much modern advice about waking up before dawn to seize the day. Ancient humans, the very people we imagine as the original early risers, rarely woke at a fixed clock hour at all. And when they did stir before light, it was because temperature and internal rhythm said the night was ending, not because a number on a device commanded it. Their wake time moved with the seasons, breathing in and out with the length of the night. Ours is frozen at a single number all year, regardless of what our biology is actually doing underneath the sheets. None of this means early rising is bad. Plenty of people function beautifully at 5 a.m., especially once their body has had time to adjust. But it does mean the story we've been told that early humans lived by relentless dawn discipline and that modern humans are simply too soft to match them isn't quite true. Our ancestors weren't early risers by willpower, they were temperature and darkness responders, waking when their biology, not their ambition, decided the night was finished, which leaves us with a strange kind of comfort. The 3 a.m. waking you've been ashamed of might be an inheritance, not a malfunction. The struggle to leap up at 5 might not be weakness, but a body still listening for cues that stopped existing the moment we invented the light switch. We didn't conquer the night. We just stopped listening to what it was trying to tell us.